Welcome to the Medicare Show. I'm your host, Jeffrey Kuhn, and I've got a special guest today with me, Eric Rule,
Nice to be here.
who's been a client now for at least a few years, I think.
Couple of years, yeah. Exactly.
And I thought you'd be a great guest, Eric, because I remember when you were first referred to me, I was warned. This guy knows a lot about the healthcare industry.
Beginner's luck.
Beginner's luck, right? And you know a lot about different health plans with, as far as your experience going to different hospitals, not just in this area, because we're in Western New York, just outside of Rochester, but really have had pretty extensive experience. And when I did finally speak to you, I was shocked how well informed you were. And I think right from then we kind of hit it off and had a very high level conversation about healthcare, different facilities, and then kind of led into your insurance needs a little bit.
I get around. I had some experiences just before I turned 65 that were a little bit negative in healthcare insurance before you and I even met. And I swore up and down, based upon the good results that I got by going out of the area, that I would make sure to have maximum flexibility when I hit 65. So I had done some research, about 80 hours of work on my own, to come up with valid sets of questions, and pretty much knew what I wanted and specifically why I wanted certain things.
Yeah, I mean, it made absolute sense. I mean, 99% of the people that come in here, and I had received a phone call today from somebody that was 64, clueless, about Medicare, the terminology, the plans. And this is somebody that went out and did a lot of research already, found me, believe it or not, on the internet, my website, and took a look and called me and trying to get some information, because a lot of the information that's out there isn't relevant to New York State. For somebody that lives here, it's very, very different.
That's true. I think that there's 3 or 4 states in the union, mostly in the Northeast, where you have the option of changing from Medicare Advantage to supplemental or vice versa.
Yeah.
In most states, as you know, and which not everybody knows, in fact, I would say the vast majority don't know, it's a one-way street. If you make an election to go Medicare Advantage, let's say that you were in Arizona or New Mexico or Texas, to go back to Medicare Supplemental at the one-time election after 65 is very difficult, extremely costly, and if you have a pre-existing condition like I do, I've had a triple bypass at 42. I've had a little bit of high blood pressure, easily controllable, but high blood pressure, and diabetes, very easily to control. It would be darn near impossible to go back to supplemental.
And they do allow you. The problem is you've got look-backs, waiting periods, with pre-existing things like that.
Sure.
And it is. I mean, there's a lot of great things about New York. People say there's a lot of negative things about New York, probably more so than there are good things. But when you look at supplemental advantage plans, I've got clients that will call, I got diagnosed with XYZ. I'm in an advantage plan, and we talk about it and decide, it's going to make sense to switch to a supplemental. We can do that with guaranteed issue status, no pre-existing, no underwriting. But the downside is everybody pays for that. When you look at, and we'll get into some of the pricing, because I do have some of the increases for 2025. But New York State, compared to every other state, and I'm licensed in a lot of states, is exponentially more expensive for supplemental plans. And when we're looking at the rate increases that are coming for next year, some of these plans for a lot of people, it's going to become unaffordable. That's the downside.
Agreed. Let me tell you how important it was, and it might not be important for every guy, I guess. But in upstate New York, about 3 years ago, for about 5-6 years before that, I was having urological problems. I had benign prosthetic hyperplasia, which means it's not cancerous, but it grows. With all men, it grows over time. When you're in your early 20s, it's about 25 grams, 20 to 25.
Yeah.
Some people say grams, other people say milliliters. The term is interchangeable. Most guys, by the time they hit 80, could be up to 40. Mine was sized in Rochester at 83. And I was offered TERP and a laser treatment, which was like TERP. The downside is that realistically there was, given the size, about a 10% chance of permanent impotence and permanent incontinence,
Mm-hmm.
24-hour day incontinence. So
That doesn't sound like something you would want to take the risk of
no, I did
heading
not.
down that path.
So I had an insurance carrier. I was paying for a gold level in Rochester because I was just 64 years old,
Mm-hmm.
pre-meeting you, and they would not let me go down to New Jersey where they were doing a relatively new procedure called aquablation,
Mm-hmm.
which they go inside with a robot, and the robot carves out the excess material to open up the channel of the urethra again to an accuracy of 1 millimeter. And it had been approved in 2017. They just started it in Rochester in a private practice.
Mm-hmm.
But this gentleman was on the cutting edge, and I had such tremendous results, and everything worked perfect, no incontinence, nothing. And I said to myself, I want maximum flexibility.
And I think that's for you with a deciding factor when you said supplemental plan is the best fit, because
Correct.
original Medicare is your primary insurance, and there really is no network then whether you can go anywhere you want that accepts original Medicare.
Because the supplemental plan must follow. They've agreed with their
Yep.
relationships with Medicare, different carriers, that if it's approved by Medicare and you're within the U.S. or provinces of the U.S. or protectorates like Guam even,
Yeah.
away you go.
Yeah. I've had a lot of folks that traveling or they've gone to specialists, for certain type of bladder cancers, things like that, to different states, and there's no question about it. Supplemental plan is the right place to be.
Sure.
Even for our clients that find out they've got to go through chemotherapy, and I tell them really find out how much it costs, because under most, I should say, predominantly all Advantage plans, you're going to pay 80% of or 20% of the cost because
Right.
it's a Part B. When you look at it, it's under Part B, which under injectables you pay 20% of the cost. So these Advantage plans, and people need to pay special attention next year. Your out-of-pocket max is going to go through the roof, at least in Western New York. So when you're looking at costs for a supplemental plan, it makes absolute sense, because when you pay the premium, you can get plans that cover 100% of it.
Well,
there's no more surprises.
I would think some people are probably scratching their head right about now.
It's interesting because when I look at supplemental plans, I've got clients in other states that are not guaranteed issue past the first year, and we look at the cost of plans, and we analyzed it and said, wow, we can get probably one of the best coverages out there on a supplemental plan for $100-some a month.
Right.
Those same plans here now for next year are approaching $400 a month.
Wow.
That's the difference. You're looking at, okay, yeah, we got guaranteed issue status here. You can change, but it comes at a cost. I think a lot of people would look differently at supplemental plans locally if they were priced more nationally, but it's so skewed here. The cost is so high. When we look at the rate changes, I don't know if you want us to kind of see. I know you
Sure.
haven't talked about some of the changes with some of the companies. I won't mention the companies' names.
Yep.
But what's interesting, Eric, is every year, I work with the Office of the Aging, and, we talk about supplemental plans, we talk about the Advantage plans, and, we look at New York State's chart that they have, the Department of Financial Services, and here's what's all the premiums for the different plans. And it changes. And what's interesting over the last 5 years is that some of these plans, 1 year they get loaded up with new members in there because of their premiums. It's almost like they're buying clients. And one example of that, I know that when we only shop price, which isn't always the right thing to do.
Of course.
Somebody I know in this business had a medical situation, and he's in this business. 7 months later, none of his medical bills were getting paid by the supplemental plan, which was one of the cheapest. That plan I know got loaded up with, I'll call an adverse pool of people because people are price shopping.
Sure.
This year, that plan's proposed increase from 24 to 25, and usually June is when the price increases for supplementals, but they've been doing another increase come January 1st. Their premium is going to go up 20% alone. And I'm looking, that's probably about the highest. There's other ones, 16.5, 19.3. There was a big insurance company here that went from just under $200 a month to almost $400 the following year. And that's because people are chasing premium.
And that's why. So the folks out there who are listening, I would advise you to deal with a gentleman like Jeff. And the reason being that the risk pools is what you're really talking about. The risk pools are getting loaded, and it's essentially capsizing the boat.
It is.
And by working with someone like Jeff to get you into a reasonable risk pool, you're not going to have surprises down the road.
Yeah.
And that no matter how much research you do, unless you're in the industry, whether you choose ultimately Medicare Advantage or Medicare Supplemental, is just almost as important as which one you choose as to get into the right pool.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, we're looking at a weighted average of all the rate increases that have been proposed for January 1st, just with the supplemental plans alone, Eric. It's the weighted average is 11.5% increase. That's average. You know, you've got a whole bunch of them, and the number one plan I know that people were looking at because they're only looking at price, and that was just Plan G. Who's got the cheapest plan?
Right.
And that's a 20% increase.
So that brings up
Alone.
the other issue about Plan G, which, unless you're born, most people are precluded now from F because of when they were born. Like I was born in 57.
It's really their effective date of 2020 is a
Correct.
kickoff. So if you're Medicare Part B prior to that date,
Right.
you can still get into F.
Right.
But most people now it's G.
Correct.
That's what they're
And
looking at.
Then the thing that I think is very important is, based upon talking it over with a broker, is to whether you get regular G or high deductible. And for me, because I'm fortunate enough to have some money in retirement, I elected to do the high deductible, which in the long run made sense. But other folks who are extremely ill might be better to pay a little bit more money.
Yeah.
Not a little bit more, a noticeable amount more, but to get the regular G.
Yeah, you know,
So those issues have got to be worked back and forth with the broker.
right. We're already scheduling, educational meetings for folks because this is going to become really important this year when you're looking at one of the flagship plans out there that everybody knows.
The main thing I would suggest is this, that you should do your homework before you even show up, I would hope. It makes your job, if not easier, it's easier to convey information. And whether it's Advantage, Supplemental, G Light, or high deductible, or heavy G, which is soup to nuts, do not look at the number. Hear all the different facets before you zero in, because you might be selling yourself short.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is not Jeff's issue or a broker's issue. That is your issue because you focused on price at time zero. Just keep an open mind. You might even have to take it home, kick it around with a spouse if you have one, and come back and then make what's the right decision for you.
The tough thing, I think, for a lot of people this next year when we've got, and again, this is pricing in Western New York. Other states are not going through the same levels of increase or premiums that we have
By
here.
the way, Florida's also high because they have a buddy down there.
Yeah. But what I was going to mention is the high deductible plans, I think, are becoming more popular and relevant because right now when you look at the deductible of about $2,800 and a premium, let's call it $60 to $70, and you're factoring in a small increase on that premium. But when you're looking at one of the flagship plans that's been around, probably one of the most popular ones, I'm not going to say the name.
Sure.
But we know the premium next year is going to be almost $400 for Plan F.
Jeff, they're not going to get any sympathy from me because I pay Medicare Part A, Part B, and Part D penalties,
yeah.
So I'm on that alone without the supplemental.
Right.
I'm paying $633.20 a month. Now that will go down over time, but
I know people, they think, well, I don't want to pay a $30 premium for a decent Advantage plan.
Sure.
And it's tough because to be on Medicare, I mean, there's people that have had great coverage through work, and they retire, and I've had more people say, Jeff, I pay more now than when I was working.
I thought I
Because
had
of all the
great
income.
coverage through work.
Yeah.
I had a local, an upstate New York plan.
Yeah.
And there was bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, the metal levels. And I figured with gold, I was paying, when I was still working, $855 a month or thereabouts, $825. And I thought, gold, metal level, I can go
Right.
any place in the U.S. for a procedure that I needed. The aquablation, turns out you can't. just like my friend works for Rochester Transit
Yeah.
Authority, and they have a business Medicare Advantage program, which they call a PPO, which you could explain a little bit. And it says you can go anywhere. That's true. You can go anywhere, but they don't take it everywhere.
They don't take it everywhere. I know.
They don't take it everywhere. On his behalf, he's a pretty healthy guy.
Yeah.
But on his behalf, I called up a University of Pennsylvania, University of Pittsburgh Medical, which has satellites all over Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And they don't take it. And I was just at Cleveland Clinic. I went to them for a procedure for an infected ingrown toenail at UPMC. And they took me in a matter of a week. Where up in upstate New York, two of the podiatrists were 2 months out. One of the universities who has a medical side was 3 months out, and they took me in a week at UPMC down in Williamsport, Central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I was just at Cleveland Clinic. I had a bad experience locally for having a colonoscopy where they pricked me 8 times and could not find my veins.
How many times?
8
8.
times.
I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah. Do you want to see the pictures I took?
8 times. I'm surprised you had a vein left after that. Yeah.
8 times. Well, the thing is, I've got relatively small veins,
Yeah.
which some people have. And on top of that, the prep procedure, you get dehydrated. And once you get dehydrated, your veins get even smaller. So instead of having a vein scanner,
Yeah.
which shows you an infrared heat, it shows typically a green, and then your veins are gray. More sophisticated ones, different colors to show the depth. But at one of the reasons I have scheduled now to go to Cleveland Clinic, one of their hospitals there. First of all, it's a center of excellence. Instead of having a few gastroenterologists at Cleveland, they have about 640.
Yeah.
I think 647, and 850 internists. Total 4,500 doctors.
It's amazing the level of care, the difference. Until you experience that.
So I had to go there, and I walked in, and there were 3 young ladies, very pleasant, in the office. I was the 5th person to come from Rochester, and out of the 647, that was about 4 doctors in that practice that were gastroenterologists. They said I was the 5th from Rochester. And I said, well, I need ultimately an internist. My doctor's about to retire in Rochester. And I also need a urologist from the aquablation days, although everything's going well, knock on wood. I need internist ultimately, and then I need cardiologist. And this was South Point Hospital, which is one of the hospitals that they own on the east side, not in the main campus, but they're all excellent. And the ladies, I said, who's the best person? And they said, well, they're all very good as far as internists go. And one handed me the name with a slip on it. And I also, when I put down urologist, there was the name of a urologist just on there who, I'll give you his credentials. Are you ready? So he went to the University of Peking, and he came to the U.S. in 1989 or 88. He'd already had a degree there. He went to a little trade school called MIT and got a degree in nuclear engineering. Then he went, after he got his degree in nuclear engineering, he went to Duke University and got his med school degree. Then he went to a little cancer center called Sloan Kettering, and he was
Sloan,
yeah.
Yeah. No dummy, this guy.
Yeah. He'd been around the block once or twice. And then he was doing cancer surgery related to urology, and he's been at Cleveland Clinic since 2014, I believe. Those are the caliber of people that you see. And when I was in talking with the doctor for the consultation, I go, on the 18th of August, I go down and I have it done on the morning of the 19th. She said, that's unacceptable, what they did to you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, have you got a vein scanner? Because I was concerned. And she said, no, we had that at other locations within the Cleveland system. But what we do have is ultrasound, or wanding with an ultrasound.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Are you convinced it's just as good?" She said, "I think so, but I'll recommend you to one of my peers in a different hospital that has that if you really want a vein scanner." And I said, "No, I trust you." So I went home, trust but verify, and I read the vein scanners are about 2,000 to 5,000, and they don't have them in most locations in Rochester because
Yeah.
they're expensive, relatively. But they don't have the sonic system for imaging, which is between, depending upon the model, it's between 15,000 and 30,000. But it is more accurate, and it actually shows the veins opening and closing with the heartbeat. So you wand with this hand and you put in the needle, or even more sophisticated ones, you load the needle into the scanner.
Yeah.
And once they see it opening and they have it at the right angle, they hit a button and it glides in right through the arm.
It's amazing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she said the chances of missing are zero. So I won't be tortured.
Yeah. And that's a whole different experience.
And
Level of care.
a whole level of care, different, and everything is linked. So I have I have the two hospitals here that I've gone to in the past, plus my doctor, all on my chart linked with. I have my chart for UPMC, and my chart now for Cleveland Clinic, so everybody can see everything, which is pretty slick. You don't have to pass notes anymore and all that. My mom just had a problem too, and she's at Cleveland Clinic. She had a cancer spot on her cheek. She had one on her nose removed through Mohs surgery with a slice.
Yeah.
And they stopped slicing once they hit a layer of tissue that is not, or a set of cells that is not cancerous, to minimize the impact on a face, especially for a woman, obviously.
Right.
Well, nobody wants their face marked.
No.
And she had one on her cheek about the size and diameter of a cigarette butt.
Yeah.
And here she was skin cancer. It was not melanoma. It was one of the other types, which I won't say, but it would have grown a little bit. They could have ultimately taken it out, but they were told at the hospital where they had the dermatology department it would be 2 months for a junior person, and it would be 3 months for a senior person. And I said, I'm going to Cleveland Clinic. I do centers of excellence.
Yeah. And how long did that take?
They called up. They said that they wanted to see the results. And they would get back to her in 8 days of the biopsy that was done in Rochester. They called the next morning and said, we can get you in 2 weeks for Mohs surgery. And I then said...
Surgery already.
That's correct. Then I said to my mother, I said, I'll bet you if you're going to get Mohs surgery and you don't want a scar, it would be best off to immediately have plastic surgery so that you don't have collagen formation. Right. And sure enough, that was an intuitive guess. And sure enough, that was correct. She called back. So they lined up the Mohs surgeon and the plastic surgeon back to back. So she had to go from one location to another at Cleveland Clinic. It took about a half an hour to drive. And they did both. And she's there right now, and they're looking and pulling the stitches out and so forth.
Now, you told me recently, I don't know if it was a family member yourself, but the local emergency room was about a 10-hour wait, and that's that Monday to Sunday.
That was her.
That was what you were told. That was her, okay.
So that was a complication. Sometimes you get edema under the skin where they... So in order to minimize the effect, they essentially went up more than they needed and went down like this. It was over here, and they tucked it into the fold of the laugh line. And, people are vain, and, they want to look good, so I understand that. Anyhow, she had a little bit of problems, so the doctor said, come in early from Cleveland Clinic. And I got a call at 2 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning for my stepdad. It was getting bigger, the swelling. It was getting a little bit hard, so it had formed a hematoma, essentially a bruise. Right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't life-threatening, but it was very concerning, the way it looked. I showed you some pictures.
Yeah.
And so we went to a local hospital, to the emergency department. Got there about 2:15 in the morning.
What day was this on?
Tuesday of this week.
You'd think that by that time, I call it the drunk bus has been cleared out, the late night stuff, but it was just getting warmed up in there.
There were people urinating in their pants. There was a woman about 45 rocking and screaming because she was coming off of narcotics, hard narcotics. people that were probably not citizens of the U.S. using it as their primary health care. So there was about 60 people in there, and after 3 hours, I was taking photographs of her face with my iPhone every hour.
Just documenting it, the
Yeah,
progression.
it was not getting any worse. It was in a
Yeah.
steady state at that point. So I walked over to one of the ladies who was there, who was not a medical person, but she was kind of coordinating the flow. And she said, it's going to be another, we were there 3, it was going to be another at least 10 hours before she
Another
was seen.
10 hours. That many people.
And she was due to be at Cleveland Clinic the next day anyhow because of the swelling. And so my stepdad loaded her and I in the car, and he took her to Cleveland Clinic, and they took her right in as soon as she got there.
It's amazing. I'll tell you. I know in this area, I'm not sure if other cities are impacted the same way, but in Monroe County, in Rochester, you're looking at the emergency rooms being used as primary care.
Absolutely.
And I every Tuesday, I'm at one of the medical facilities as a Medicare resource in the city, and there's a lot of people that haven't recertified with Medicaid, can't afford prescriptions, and they have to recertify. Normally, that process could get done from 2 to 4 weeks.
So there's a lag.
There's a lag. The lag now has gone to over 3 months, and the social services is overwhelmed. And I tell people you got to call in because they're overwhelmed with the number of immigrants that are getting processed here. They're just overwhelmed beyond their capacity.
Sure.
And it's bogging the whole medical system down. Now these folks are going in without insurance in some cases.
Of course, they were there without
Right?
insurance.
So who pays for that, right? The question is that they should have it. They don't have it. And it's just creating a giant mess that I don't know how the cycle is going to get broken. But, real quick story, Eric, on a couple experiences I had outside this area. This was pre-COVID. I had a partial blockage. I was down in Miami, and I had some abdominal pain. I was getting sick. And I went to Baptist Urgent Care. It was right around the corner from where I was. Went in there within 15 minutes max. They're like, you've got a blockage, and we're going to give you 2 choices. We're going to call an ambulance and have them take you to the hospital. I didn't feel like I was in pain or anything.
But it could be a real problem.
Right. And to me, okay, I got a partial blockage. They said, or you're going to promise us you're going to go there right now and let us know where you're going to go, and we're going to call ahead.
To make sure, yeah.
So called and found as a Baptist, actually, was the network down in South Miami. And 10, 15 minutes, walked in, they're waiting for me. I go, what am I dreaming? Right? We're expecting you. They got me right in, x-rayed. Within 30 minutes, they made the determination we're going to admit you. And within an hour, I'm in a private room. Best of care. I cannot tell you. I just was blown away by the level of care. I came, guy got, released from the hospital and then passed through, so I didn't have to do a surgery then. But this was not so long ago. I started feeling like I had a blockage again up here, partial blockage. Went to a local hospital, which was recommended to have the best gastro department around, quickest access to the team. Aside from being in the emergency room, under observation, which they were going to admit me to the hospital. I was there for more than 24 hours. It was like a scene from a crazy show. The noise,
I would say
the
it was
people,
like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
the screaming. It was like people having nightmares while I was awake. And I'm not exaggerating. So it took about a day and a half before I got brought up to observation, which once I got up there, I got to tell you, it was amazing.
Sure.
I was really surprised for this area. But to get to that point, and I was lucky. I mean, I got right in, only sitting down there for a day and a half. But what a difference of an experience.
Absolutely. Well, I can
with
tell you,
different
at
places.
Cleveland Clinic, it was very clean, not luxurious, but super clean. And after I came out of my initial consultation to set up for the colonoscopy, there was a young gentleman in the hallway where the elevators were. I was on the first floor. And he was kind of a security guy / guiding people, not severe security or anything. And he said, sir, so did you have a good experience? And I said, yes, it was excellent. In fact, it exceeded my expectations. I'm here from Rochester, New York. And he said, sir, I'd like to shake your hand. Thank you very much for coming to Cleveland Clinic. You're the type of patient we like. I just about got misty. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe the treatment.
Right. It's like, where am I? I'm dreaming, right?
Yeah,
You want to wake up, go, what is going on?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I told you I still do some consulting work,
Yep.
and I showed you the picture of I go down to Houston and work a little bit with MD Anderson, and I showed you the picture of the lobby. You could literally eat off the floors.
Yeah.
The terrazzo floors there. That was 8 a.m. in the morning.
God.
And it's just there. That's what I think that a lot of
Yeah.
people who don't travel much realize, that not every place is the same. Not every place is overloaded.
Yeah.
Yes, there are good doctors in Rochester, but the delivery systems, once you get to something complex like a hospital, are, I'll be kind, not up to par.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the moral of this whole story is, don't be closed-minded geographically.
Nor on what insurance that you select or what pool you get into with the insurance company.
And when you go to a supplemental plan, it opens up the entire country as far as options go. As long as they take
including the
original
U.S.
Medicare.
protectorates like Guam and
Yeah.
the Virgin Islands and so forth.
Yeah, this is a big difference. I mean, in New York, you pay a little bit more for it, but there's a good fit, and for folks that want to have the option to get health care other places, you can do that.
So I could be wrong, and I'm sure Jeff will correct me. If you go Medicare Part G, high deductible,
The supplemental plan.
the
G.
supplemental plan
Yeah.
G, with a formulary, which is used for
The Part D
pills, your Part
prescriptions.
D, correct. You're probably looking at combined $100, $110 a month, somewhere in there.
Here it's going to be a fair bit more.
For high
G.
deductible?
High deductible, no.
Right.
High deductible G, and it depends on the drug coverage. There's going to be, we're going to have another show to talk about that in itself. Because the Inflation Reduction Act is a show in of itself, because the drug plan premiums are going to go through the roof. Some of the costs have been passed on. It's going to go to the consumer. But here you can get a high deductible G, $60, $70 a month right now.
Right. And the formulary this year, I'm paying about $3.70 a month.
Well, that's the cheapest Part D plan there is, which fits with the prescriptions you have. But
that's correct.
It's like a really
they have to be
tough
tailored,
baking.
but that's going to go up a little bit. But I guess my point is
$100, yeah, $100 some dollars. You can get a plan G with a
high
drug plan.
deductible.
Yeah.
So if you want flexibility, and I would also encourage anybody who has any type of pending health care issues in the greater Rochester, Buffalo, or Syracuse area, when they don't have a problem, go up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to the emergency department.
Take a look, right? It's going to change your perspective on things.
Sit in a seat for 2 hours, and if they say anything, tell them that you have a friend in there and you're waiting.
Yeah.
And you will have a revelation like you've never had before. I'll bet money on the fact that you'll have a revelation.
Yeah, it's a real eye opener.
Yeah.
It's like you're in a movie in a different world.
And then I sent you, some folks don't know this, but if you look on Medicare's website, Medicare, I used to work in the high-tech industry. Well, still do a little bit of work, but mostly retired.
You're on Medicare.gov is what you're...
Yeah, Medicare.gov, exactly. They take a look at the approximately 4,500 hospitals, and they keep statistics. So it's big data. It is not subjective. The gold star system are the patients. And if they're from a small town, they might not know any better. But the other one is done by the government. So they take a look at the person's age, the person's sex, what problem that they have, what was the resolution, was it satisfactory as far as getting better, did they die, whether it be heart disease or renal failure or whatever. And they rate it on a 1 to 5 star basis. And people who look on that website will find from, other than there's a 4-star in Buffalo at the VA, which I can't go to. I wasn't a veteran, which I'm glad that they have super duper care.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of hospitals from Albany to Buffalo down to the state line, other than New York City, are 1, 2, or 3 star. And very few 3 stars.
There's a lot of people that look at that star system, right? Not so much in the medical field, but what they look at is the insurance industry, because all the plans that are Medicare, the federal-based plans have a star rating. What's interesting, though, Rick, and I haven't even mentioned this to you, is this past year, they look back and say, okay, satisfaction, there's a number of criteria they base it
Right.
on. And people look at it and say, oh, it's a 4-star plan, a 3-star plan. This is very different from what you're talking about.
Right.
The one thing I'll tell people is that that's really good information when you're looking at where are you getting your health care, how's it rated. But I tell everybody with a grain of salt, you got to be careful with the star systems with insurance companies. They're looking back,
Right.
and is that data stale by the time you look at it? Is it not? It's like Morningstar. I've been a certified financial planner. I've been in the financial advisory field for 25 years, and it's always in hindsight when you look at a star rating with risk and reward, and you can't predict what's going to happen the following year. And there were fund companies that went from top rated to the bottom rated based on the risk of their portfolio. The insurance companies, some of them now have recently and satisfactorily sued CMS for the star rating system because they get reimbursed a lot of how they're performing. And they found there were some errors and faults in there, which cost some of those insurance companies millions of dollars. So, yeah, the insurance company's a bit different, but the medical field, that's great information and a resource
And
to look at.
And if you want more granularity, it requires a lot more homework, and it requires you to really grab a cup of coffee when you're not distracted. To go into U.S. News and World Report. There they rate. So they have ranked. And then they have high performing and then non-high performing. And the ranked are out of the, I think that there's probably about 1,000 or so, because some of them are chains like Kaiser Permanente and so forth. But they rate the different disciplines. For example, neurology, nephrology for kidneys, diabetes, pulmonary for lung problems and so forth. And Cleveland, again, is number 1 or number 2. Obviously, Mayo is number 1 or number 2, depending upon they move back and forth. And that's overall. So for cancer, they might only be like number 7 or 8, where MD Anderson's number 1.
Yeah.
But if you want real granularity, that's where you go. But the first cut is the Medicare, where the government rates the star system. And the second cut would be if you have a problem. And then U.S. World Reports rates them worldwide also, the different hospitals.
There is some really good information on some of these government websites, and I'm amazed at how good they've gotten with the technology, with searching, how easy it is
big
to
data.
use.
Yeah.
I think what I'd like to do sometime, if you're up for it, have you come back and we can look at some of that data that's in there.
Yeah,
Medicare. We'll look at some of the, we'll see what the ratings
about
are.
how the data is sharded up and so forth.
We're
We're
let's
not going
look
to
at-
get into quantum computing, which is a separate project I'm working on right now.
Right, but we'll at least look at some of the local, ratings. We'll look at some of the national, healthcare facilities, see how they're rated, and maybe we'll target some popular areas and see, what's really highly rated in those areas. And
Sure.
yeah,
Well, the other thing about supplemental that I shared with you. So in 23, there was approximately 7 hospitals / some of the hospitals were part of a chain. And I didn't know this, but you confirmed it when I read that Medicare Advantage can be dropped in mid-year. I always thought if it was in force, a contract, it would have to be done till the end of the year.
there's certain times of the year you can, right? We've got right now special election periods that allow you to change your plan.
No, I'm talking about the insurance carrier can stop.
Oh, you can just drop it.
Can drop it mid-year. Shocking. So last year, Mayo, which is got satellites, the main obviously in Rochester, Minnesota, but my buddy's down in Florida. That's how he found out, because he had Medicare Supplemental. His parents had it, but you cannot go to Mayo. Most of the time, you cannot go to Cleveland Clinic or UPMC. There are a couple of small
In the state of
local-
Florida, you're saying that's what his experience has been.
Correct. You can't go there. He did it. Luckily, he had supplemental. Any of the Mayo.
Yeah.
And then I sent you that 15 more this year have dropped out chains.
There's some areas like San Diego, there was an article about it. Everybody there, all of a sudden, they said, you know what, we're not taking advantage plans, period,
Right.
from anybody. So it left a lot of people trying to scramble and figure out what do they do, what's the right plan to go into. I mean, we're fortunate here we haven't had that, just I think because of the
Sure.
cost and the contracts. But this area is one of the most expensive places for the insurance companies to do
But
business.
think about, let's say that
Yeah.
you were a person of average means, and you were living in Southern Cal, from somewhere between LA and San Diego.
Yeah.
And you were close to some pretty good hospitals there.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but mostly pretty darn good, some excellent in LA. And all of a sudden you can't go there. So then the question becomes, do you move to New York? Most people don't have that kind of money, get residency and change,
Yeah.
which you could do. Very expensive. My old boss can do that, who lives in New Jersey. We talked about him. He's
Yeah.
very well healed. So that's out of the question. So then the question becomes, can you move to another Medicare Advantage that they may or may not take? Going to the county hospital, or going to Medicare, getting back in, paying a high premium, and not have any supplemental because you couldn't afford the supplemental, and taking it on the chin for the 20 or 30%, which if you had cancer and it ran you $750K.
Right. Well, there's, this, no matter what, you're going to pay your Medicare Part B premium. What people
Correct.
in this area would already know, because I've already seen the plans for next year. And it's just the beginning of August. And I do know one of the insurance carriers is going to drop one of their Advantage plans altogether.
Sure.
Great. It's a very popular plan here. And it's been around for a couple of years. And if people don't pay attention to this stuff and look at their annual notices of change, what's going to happen with this change is, if they do not select another Advantage plan or pick up a supplemental plan, they automatically get put back as original Medicare as their primary. No drug coverage, that's it. Which means they're susceptible to a 20% coinsurance on all their Medicare Part B expenses after the deductible.
Correct.
And I'll tell you, with the clients that we have and all the letters we send out, the group meetings we do, the education, a lot of people don't pay attention to this stuff. This is going to be a really significant year with the Inflation Reduction Act coming into play, the increases, and the people that don't pay attention are going to have a real eye-opener and a rude awakening come January, when they may be really negatively impacted, and it's their own fault for not paying attention to this
Well,
stuff.
I know that you and people in your business who are good, you say you can switch to New York. Let's say that you're getting older, your mental acuity is not potentially at 87, 92 years what it once was. And let's say that you're not watching that as closely as you should, and New York changes so you can't go back.
Right.
I used to say, or my grandmother actually from the old country used to say, what's done is done.
It is. The tough thing is, and I've got people that call me about their parents, and the first thing I ask them is, do you have power of attorney? Because I've met people where you could tell that their mental faculties are a bit compromised in making that decision. And if there's any sign of confusion,
or if they're on a narcotic, they
know,
cannot sign a contract.
Yeah, and I have to ask, is somebody else available that has power of attorney that can make decisions for you? Spouse can't do it.
Yep. If they're old, they are on some type of narcotic for the pain to cope with that.
Yeah.
They do not have a capacity to contract.
Right. And any sign of cognitive impairment, you can't change somebody's plan unless somebody's there that has power of attorney to do so.
So it's
and there's major things happening. I know there's a lot of people that are going to get impacted by this change next year. So
sure.
Yeah. Well, Eric, I appreciate your time.
Anytime.
And talking the stories. And I hope we can share more. Down the road.
Of course we can.
Here.
I'd be glad to. It's daunting.
Yeah.
It's for me there was a clear path. For other people there will not be such a clear path.
Yeah.
And having a gentleman like you who can walk them through that, who has the patience, has the knowledge, and explains the pluses and minuses, and if there's at all a doubt whether it's Advantage or Medicare Supplemental or high deductible, sleep on it a couple days, and then come back in, because it can really affect your life.
Yeah, you don't want to throw a dart at this one and take the chance. And we're not affiliated, although we've talked about a couple of medical facilities. We're no way, any shape, or form affiliated with them.
We are not.
Or anybody.
It's just anecdotal information that they can check out, but they can do their research as far as the government website to take a look at the rating,
Yep.
star rating, and they can look at U.S. News and World Report. That is not subjective.
One of the things I'll probably repeat multiple times, down the road, and I always say, do not believe what you see on TV or what you get in the mail. It's extremely misleading and misrepresentative.
I was always trained from Germans from the old country, never lie.
No.
But worse than a lie in business, I've seen where people tell half-truths to draw you into a certain conclusion that is not beneficial to you.
Yeah.
And a lot of those advertisements on TV, in my estimation, are half-truths to guide you into a place where you might not want to go.
It's to get people to take action and call in. The same thing with the mailers. And I get clients that ask about it. And I'll tell you, I ran into somebody that was fairly high up with one of the insurance companies had set a table up, and I asked about the networks, here in this area. I already knew the answer. And I typically won't ask somebody a question like that unless they already know the answer to it. Most of the time, lied to my face, and I know who is and who wasn't in network. I said, we have everybody in network. I know that's not true. And
I ran into a guy years ago. He worked for a different company. He retired and came to our company back in the early 2000s. And I worked for one of the largest telecom equipment manufacturers for the bulk of my career. And he used to say, people say a lot of things, some of which are even true.
Some of which are even true, right?
That's right,
Exactly. That's true.
Well, thank you very much.
Eric, thanks for coming in. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.